And because of the way that we're blending this world of the digital and the physical, I do believe that AI will make us more human.
On this episode of the RCN podcast, the president and CEO of the Digit Group, Inc., Paul Doherty.
We're now in a world where these virtual worlds are mediums, they're communication devices. I was responsible for being on the team that wrote the chapter on City of the Future, which is called Neon, specifically about the world of reality capture.
Not very many people are really pushing smart cities and digital twins and Metaverse.
For 3 years, I designed all the different ways of showcasing IBM equipment.
You got to focus on it as a tool, not the solution.
Limitations of technology have gone, and I was willing to push it, going, no, but we can do better. Operative words, courage, curiosity, and at the end of the day, you don't need permission. Just go and do it.
Welcome to Reality Capture Network podcast today. Excited to be talking with Paul here. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Matthew. It's been a long time coming. We look forward to this.
Yeah, let's start back with your story a little bit in your career.
I like to consider myself a character from a very famous movie. And I do think that's a documentary. And it's called Forrest Gump. Because my career has been unbelievably blessed. I've been at the right place at the right time. And don't know how it happened. If I planned my career, I'd be a genius, Matthew. But really, I'm Irish and I'm lucky. Okay. And that's kind of the story. And I think that, understanding that when you see certain things happening and you act on them, that's really the inspiration that I'd love to have your podcast listeners you could at least listen to and then see how they can have their own journey.
Yeah.
Right. So recently, I was at an industry conference in Norfolk, Virginia, and there was a guy. He just got a new job. It's his first job out of school, and he saw my name tag, and he goes, "Paul Doherty, I'm linked to you on LinkedIn." He goes, "You're the OG." I'm going, "OG, old guy?" And he goes, "No, the original gangster." And I'm like, okay. So how did I get there? Well, I am an architect still. I can still get sued, a real one, not a software architect.
Okay, perfect.
But I was a contractor before then, became an architect, and now I'm a real estate developer. So I kind of did this progression in a very unusual way. But the overriding, thing that gets me up in the morning is when I went to school, I did well. So they gave me an option to start doing my internship, doing a work study program in Manhattan. And I had a choice to be in any of the architectural firms, but I said, am I going to do the next 3 years doing bathroom details? Is that really what I want to do? So what I did was I got an offer from IBM up in Armonk at headquarters, and they were looking for a global designer to come in and create new types of showrooms, showcases for their trade show booths. So I took it. And for 3 years, I designed all the different ways of showcasing IBM equipment that back in the late 80s, they were the only game in town. Apple was kind of emerging. There was no Compact. There weren't these other groups. So the software groups, especially in the young startups, wanted to be seen on IBM computers because that would show that, it's a business tool and they get more sales. So I started with this little startup out of Washington State called Microsoft and got friendly with them. There was another group out of the West Coast called Adobe. Then out of Canada, there was this other group called Corel. All these now famous brands, they were just startups, and they wanted to work with me because they could showcase their software inside of an IBM booth at things like Comdex or PC Expo. So I got to learn how to pull computers apart, put them back together again hardware-wise, link them together through networks, and make sure that the software worked, right? So, and that's just as a showcase designer. But ultimately what came out of that was I stopped one night and I went, look at all these OEMs, other equipment manufacturers, like for motherboards and memory and graphics boards and all these different things. I'm going, where does IBM come in? Well, they're the ones that pull it all together, right? I'm like, isn't that the building industry, right? Where, the general contractor doesn't own a window or a door factory. They've got to do OEMs. And I went, well, then why can't a building be a computer? And that led me to my career, which is where I'm still chasing that dream of, wouldn't it be really interesting that the buildings can actually have their own personalities, their own ways of communicating with us, so that we could have a more secure, a safer type of environment, and quite frankly, a more interesting experience. Right?
Yeah.
So to fast forward to today, and I'll back into how all this evolved, we are reaching that plateau faster than I ever thought. especially with the newer tools, with the tools that your community deals with, which are the building blocks to digital real estate. I'm really fond of I have two boys, teenagers, right? And they are all into gaming and whatnot. And during COVID, I had to worry, is their social skills going to be, muted? Or because one of the things about going to school, of course, is, the academics, but also the social way of how to interact with others. I should have listened to The Who, right? Because The Who had a great song called The Kids Are All Right. And then the kids are all right. They just are dealing with it differently. They go and evolve from this digital world into in real life without missing a beat. There is no difference on how they treat each other or that social interaction going, wow, they actually have a better way of understanding that they're the natives right now. And you and I, Matthew, we're the immigrants. And we're continuing to learn, right? So after IBM, I did the traditional thing of going into internship, doing kitchen blowouts out in Long Island, just paying the bills and doing hand drafting. When I got introduced to this thing called AutoCAD and put myself through school in Manhattan to learn that thing, and I became a really good CAD jockey because I was really good at hand drafting and specifying. So this was just an augmented way of going about things. And because of that, I started then graduating into bigger and larger firms, eventually into construction firms, design build, right? That was my passion. I still don't understand the separation between design and build, but that's our industry's issue, right? But what happened was, because of the traffic out specifically on Long Island, where there's just a little bit of land and too many people, to get to all my job sites was just taking too long. So I actually purchased these things called luggables from Compact Computer, which were portable computers that I brought out to the site, and the site supers at every one of my sites. Then I had this thing called a dial-up modem and plug that in so that they could take a telephone line, plug it in, and I was now connected to them. And we were using Lotus Notes at the time because they had this really cool feature called DocLink that I could link my drawings and my specifications where they could actually see them and view them. It's almost like going out to the job site now and you have your roll of prints and you can see things. And that was great. And I had a lot of fun doing that. It's also very expensive because running Lotus Notes was no joke. So I got a phone call from a former IBM colleague, and he said, I know you're into this connectivity stuff. He goes, have you seen this thing called Mosaic? And so I said, no. He goes, tell that over to this thing. It's at an edgy site over at the University of Illinois in Champaign. And I hooked up with a guy named Mark Andreessen, who actually created this thing. And suddenly he showed me a graphic user interface web browser. Within 2 weeks, I got rid of Lotus Notes, and we were a web-based organization in 1994.
Wow.
Right? So hyperlinks were the big thing for me. The HTTP, the really, really important thing that's going to be something that, as this conversation evolves, becomes the linchpin to how your community is going to make a hell of a lot of money and be very, very important as the cornerstones of spatial computing. Okay? So I'm going to leap from 1994 to 2024 here in a minute. But in 1995, I started to get introduced to a whole bunch of different folks because of this connectivity and me using a web browser when everyone thought that the internet was AOL and CompuServe. Yeah. Right? So I had a friend that worked in publishing through a group called RS Means. They're the construction cost publishers. And I had this idea saying, there's so much that we can do as an industry with the internet. And everyone kept on telling me, including the large publishers, the internet's a fad. It'll go away, right? So all of a sudden, I went, no, man, I'm going to show you. And so what I did was I wrote a book based upon my experiences on how to use it in the field, how to use it inside the office, and ultimately supply chain. How do we start to tie all this together? So I wrote this book, and it was called Cyberplaces. 1997, it was finally published.
That's a nice small book.
Yeah. Well, I actually did some futures on this because what happened was we had I had the opportunity to be working with the San Francisco Giants baseball team as an advisor to a group that has a contract with them called Planet 9 Studios in San Francisco. And they were tasked with creating a 3D model of the new stadium because they were moving from Candlestick Park. They wanted to show the different stakeholders, what does this thing look like? So they didn't want to spend a lot of money on engineering software or 3D software like 3D Max, things like that. So I said, just give me a little bit. And I contacted some friends, and they were working on this new technology, not HTML, but VRML, virtual reality markup language. And what we did was we actually then, instead of like 3D back in the day, you had to give it a path, and it was your bias, your way of showing off what the space was like. But with VRML, it was up to the end user. They could turn it, they could twist it, they could walk through it on their own terms. So I decided to do some captures. You can see that's Netscape. That's what this thing is, right? And that's how we actually showcased the new San Francisco Giants baseball stadium to the stakeholders for free. And we were able then to call it the Metaverse, published in 1997. So there's been a lot of people working on this stuff for a very long time.
Yeah.
Thus the OG.
Yes,
right?
the OG.
So to fast forward, that really took off because people go, wow, we could really use this internet stuff for things that are real and important, that there's dollar signs behind it, and it actually has some meaning. So we went ahead and started to create communities with avatars. One was called Alpha World. That eventually became known as Second Life. At the same time, I got this phone call out of the blue, and there was this guy that he was very hyper. He was like, we have a new way of doing CAD. It's called 3D parametric CAD. And meanwhile, I'm like Mr. Internet. I'm like, what do I want to do with a desktop piece of software? And plus, they had no money. They said, listen, we'll give you stock. We just need you to open up your network because we really need to get seats in these large architectural engineering firms for our software. 3D parametric CAD. I'm like, that's a really clumsy way of calling something. So I got into it. They were out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. It was a kernel that originally came from the UK that was bought by Parametric Technologies. They didn't know what to do with it. So these two guys, Leonid and Erwin, decided we're going to do something with it and we're going to sell it to architects. And they renamed it Building Information Modeling. The name of the company was called Charles River Software, which you know now is Revit. So we were responsible for getting about $800,000 worth of sales. And Carol Bartz and Autodesk bought us for $133 million. That's when I said, screw architecture, I'm in software because this is unbelievable. So yeah, another OG story. Again, Forrest Gump, right? So yeah, I'm one of the guys behind Revit. Then we also created another technology called Buzzsaw, which was really cool for doing online project management, which we sold to Autodesk. And my big hit was with Tririga, a new way of looking at facility management that we sold to IBM. And that was a big hit. That was over $500 million.
Wow.
So with all those successes, and this actually fast forwards into 2024 now, I was like the darling of Sand Hill Road, where all the venture capitalists were in Silicon Valley. So Sequoia Capital, Clyde Perkins, Silicon Valley Bank, rest in peace. All these different groups, they wanted to introduce me to other folks. And they had just done a deal by selling their technology to Google. And it was led by this guy named Remy Arnaud, still a friend of mine. And Remy had created a technology that was part of the Keyhole roll-up that you know is Google Earth. So I was partnering up with Google Earth, or at least the guys behind it. And Remy was a little frustrated. He said, you know, the thing with Google is they have images, but they're all stupid. There's nothing behind it. You have to attach data to it to make it make sense. He goes, I really feel that the data can actually create geometry. So we created a technology called Orbi. And we could see not just a single building like the San Francisco Giants building, right? But we can see entire neighborhoods, districts, entire cities, all in a browser without any latency. I'm going, wow, this is special. So I let my friends know at IBM, and they had just gotten done with this thing called the Smarter Planet, Smarter Cities, Smarter Building marketing campaign. And I had moved to China because I got involved with urban design. And suddenly I had a tool that allowed IBM to market, and we were calling it Smart Cities. So that's why this came around.
Yep.
Which was, an adaptation of a new type of urban design that would take existing information specifically about the world of what's real, reality capture, what's now, motion capture, and then simulating that into the future so that we can actually have better outcomes, right? So I have a deep respect for your community because you guys are the building blocks to the new digital medium that is now devouring the world as we speak.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about smart cities, I then incorporated a lot of different innovations and whatnot, got very close with the Chinese government still to this day, which then, because I'm a private citizen, eyebrows were raised in Washington and said, what are you doing? Would you mind coming in and talking with us about this? So I've been very close with with the White House through different administrations, the State Department, Commerce Department, because of the breadth of what we can do.
Yeah.
So that's where the little snowball became this, huge boulder chasing me down the hill going, wow, okay, now what do we do?
Yeah.
And that's when, now into 2024, I've been really blessed with being introduced because of the heightened nature of working with leadership. We were introduced to leadership in the Middle East, which is a large presence of ours, both in Saudi Arabia and in the UAE, in Europe, and now finally going into Latin America. What we do is much different than just trying to make money. I almost find that money happens when you actually find something you love.
Yeah.
You have a passion behind it, and it's that abundance model rather than the scarcity model where, growing up in New York City, everything was scarce. Space on the roadway to get to work on time and traffic jams, and there's only a finite amount of pie, and I'm going to grab my piece of the pie. I've evolved into learning that, give it up, and abundance happens. And it's this deep spirit of that positive energy that, again, it starts attracting other things and other good people so that you can actually make a difference. So we were approached because of the good work that we were doing in Saudi, the great work that we were doing in the UAE between Abu Dhabi and Dubai, that the ruling family of Dubai, the Al Nahyan family, approached us and said, we'd like to work with you. So one of the fund managers from the family office in Abu Dhabi approached us and said, we're going to create a fund called One World Impact. It's going to be an impact investment fund for you. Let's go out around the world and find a way of providing impact either to an individual, a family, a community, society, or the environment. And so we have long runways instead of, traditional types of investment where you have a very limited amount of time to pay things back. This has time to breathe. So it allows us to explore things like innovations on water, energy, transportation, all these different things that usually take a long time, especially in the public realm, to come around, because there's always the local fights. Why should we be doing, intelligent infrastructure when we have to pay for more teachers and more firefighters and police? And I agree with them. There's a healthy balance there. But by having an impact investment, we now have a way of lighting that fuse finally and start to see, does this stuff work beyond PowerPoint? So where I'm at now in 2024 is working with this fund on real projects. Here's another Forrest Gump moment. Because of all this work that we were doing in the Middle East, I got approached by McKinsey & Company to be a subject matter expert on a very specific project they're working on for the royal family in Saudi. And so I spent a lot of time in Riyadh in 2016, and we came up with the blueprint for the reconstruction, reimagining of Saudi Arabia called Vision 2030. I was responsible for being on the team that wrote the chapter on a city of the future, which is called NEOM. So yeah, between Revit and NEOM, you could throw tomatoes.
Yeah,
that's what we've been involved with, and because of NEOM, I got challenged. Which is, I have all this back-end knowledge from the 90s of creating virtual worlds. I'm having them come to life in places like China. Like we have a virtual reality theme park in Qingdao, China. We took all of our Revit models, put it on top of the Unreal Engine by Epic Games, and we created an environment, almost like a three-dimensional website, call it their own Metaverse, right? That allows people to come to my theme park before it's opened and pay to start testing out all these newer types of technologies from Blizzard Activision, from Epic, from Unreal, from Tencent. And we created this emporium that people now want to go there in person because they've spent time with it virtually. Mm-hmm. So we've been having a lot of fun with this thing because it lowered my construction loan cost by 18%. Before I built it, I was making money.
Yep.
So that's kind of the model I'd love to have, your community out there, our community, start to embrace, to say there's ways of rethinking and reimagining that the world of digital real estate is here.
Yeah.
It's a matter now of how do you monetize it for good? And then how do we start to build the building blocks so that we can hand it off to the next generation? Because they are the natives and they're going to learn things that they don't need to learn. It's just instinctual about how they work. And also, trying to attract people into our industry. When the average age of a sheet metal worker is 58 years old, That's scary.
Yep.
Right? Because now robots and AI are not going to build the buildings in our lifetime. They will eventually, probably, but not in our lifetime.
Yeah.
So what I did was this past December, I wanted to capture the spirit of what that is, both from a technical aspect, what that means also from the aspect of our community of how to embrace this stuff beyond just the production part. Because production is a really bad measure in our world, because when you deal with digital, it's more about efficiency and effectiveness. Production, you can do something bad, very productive. And with digital, you can save as, and it could be the wrong thing a million times over, but you were very productive.
Yeah.
Right. So I wanted to change the narrative. So wrote a book published by John Wiley called Unlocking the Metaverse, which does talk about reality capture, the idea of motion capture, how we're now in a world where these virtual worlds are mediums, they're communication devices. You know, there's still the need for the designer to provide the intent of what's wanted by the owner so that the constructors can actually build things.
Yep.
And that's been since the time that you could put, a stick into the sand, we were communicating. We now have communications on steroids.
Yeah.
We have ways of doing things with velocity, quicker, faster, and cheaper, and go through simulations, especially with the use of agents and large language models and all these things now that are thrusting us in order to make the mundane go into the background and let the machines do what the machines do well, which is compute. And I'm a firm believer that because of that, and because of the way that we're now blending this world of the digital and the physical, I do believe that AI will make us more human. It's not going to take us over. It's not this dystopian, let's get scared and just ignore this thing. It has a way of taking the mundane so that we can have a higher level of discourse and actually learn from each other instead of having your head down and just being busy and getting all this busy work done. I'm shocked that in my lifetime, after studying as a kid things like World War II, that we actually have 2 active wars going on right now. And I'm convinced it's because they're not talking. They're not communicating that led to these conflicts, right? So with AI, would that have stopped it? Not sure. But I know that it would have taken the mundane and actually raises the level of how we try and communicate with each other.
Yeah.
So that's my 38-second elevator speech.
Perfect. That was great. I appreciate everything you shared and just hearing some of your story, and it gives some insight into what you've come through. I think hearing the diverse seats you've sat in and the roles you've played, again, it really gives some insight into why you think the way you do and where you're at. So I think there's definitely a little bit of unpacking I want to do. First
Good luck
being,
with that.
yeah, we'll see where we go here. The first being, it's I feel it's rare to find people that are very forward thinking, right? The majority of workforce is focused on the immediate, focused on doing their one thing really good. And so there is just a general lack of innovation in whole. And now if I especially look at our industry of the built environment, of construction, engineering, architecture, all these industries that are building our world, it's an area that we really need that. What do you think it was for you that it feels like your journey, the stories you've told, is that you've always been very on the front edge of wherever things are now? Not very many people are really pushing smart cities and digital twins and metaverse. And how did you stay on top of that? How did you stay ahead of the curve?
Curiosity and courage. If I knew what was going to be the result and pushing the boulder up the hill for all those decades, I don't know if I would have taken that first step, actually. So a little bit of naivety. But also, I knew no one from this industry growing up. My dad was in the airline business. My mom was still mom. Most of my aunts and uncles and cousins were in Ireland. I'm actually a first-generation American. 52 first cousins.
Oh, man.
That's when, Roman Catholic nation. So, no protection and really bad TV. What else are going to do? So, I think that, looking back and also looking forward at the same time was about that courage and curiosity. You can have a healthy way of going about your daily work. But because I didn't know anyone in the industry, I didn't know that I was doing something different. But I also saw that people were kind of myopic, right? You have trades, and be a painter, but be the best painter you can be. Be a framer, be the best framer you can be. Be a reality capture professional, right? But be the best that you can be. And I love that about our industry, because people are very passionate, because it's a craftsmanship type of trade, the way that people go about things, which AI will never replace.
Yep.
By the way, but people using AI will.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing here about, even back then, pencil drawings, I was really, really good at it. My lettering was really great and everything else. But when I went to CAD, I noticed a couple of things. It needed to be improved. It still does. I mean, AutoCAD, line weights, man. What happened to line weights? Still, since 1980s, right? So, you take a look at where the limitations of technology have gone, and I always wanted to push it, going, no, but we could do better, right? Because I thought of it as a craftsmanship. But I also saw that, there's ways of getting ahead of where the problems are, so that it doesn't become a problem. So that phrase or quote actually from Leonardo da Vinci rings true in our industry, and I wish more would think through what that means. I'm learning how to see again that everything is connected to everything. And that is something that the digital world, I think, is starting to shine a light on.
Yeah.
Because you can start to see things in advance, like clash detection's a big thing. Geez, clash detection's been around forever. It's just that now you can see it.
Yeah.
Before it becomes an issue when you're in the job trailer and doing things and whatnot, right? So, I think that, just not seeing ahead, but being able to see. And that's a big deal, because you have to see differently. Like, there's a different perspective. It's like a multiverse. You have to start to see it in advance. So if you know that this is going to go wrong, you can choose to look at it, pop popcorn, and go, I see you. And that happens, But I almost consider that like sabotage, especially out on the job site. If you know there's something there, do something about it. There's something on the ground, pick it up.
Yep.
Have some self-worth. It's like what Dr. Martin Luther King said, to the janitor. If you're the janitor, be the best janitor you can be. Have pride in who you are. It's not about what you're doing. It's about how you're doing it. And I think, Matthew, it sounds very highbrow and whatnot, but I think instinctually there's certain people that just think that way.
Yeah.
And I just happen to fall into this category at this specific time in our industry of massive transformation.
Yep.
And I almost feel like I'm out in the bush, right? And I'm slicing all the jungle away. I'm going, all right, it's good over here. It's like, oh, no, back up. You don't want to go that way.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like that's my job a little bit, because I cross industries. I cross actual, not even industries, but like getting into the world of leadership. When I can walk in to China and, talk with leadership in Beijing, like it's no problem. People say, how do you do that? And it's like, well, you just be a human.
Do it.
Yeah. There's a great phrase from my friend and mentor, Scott Simpson, a great architect up in Boston. He said once to me, he said, Paul, you don't need permission to be successful. Just go out and be successful. You don't need permission. So I think that those operative words, courage, curiosity, and at the end of the day, you don't need permission. Yeah. Just go and do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess even on that same note, you don't need permission. You got to be curious. You have to have courage. A lot of people hold people back that are interested in being curious, trying something outside the box. I'm sure you've probably dealt with that. How do you manage that? How does someone that they're listening to this, they're in their, mid-20s, they're working at a construction firm, they want to think outside the box. They want to get into these technologies. They want to help build this future, but they're in a lot of companies, their culture is, no, this is your role, this is what you do. They don't really create the space for that. Then what?
Yeah. How do you create your own environment to nurture the curiosity, courage, and permissions? Right. That's not an easy answer, and I wish there was one. And it is up to individuals' personalities as well, and their current situations. There's people that are, they're in their first stages of their careers, and they have all these tools, and they're going, why is grandpa over there not expecting this stuff to happen?
Yeah.
Are they scared? Are they waiting for time so that they can retire and they don't have to deal with it?
Yeah.
Because in our lifetime, everyone listening on this podcast, the value of digital real estate will far outweigh the value of physical real estate. Let me say that again. Digital real estate will be worth more than the physical buildings themselves or infrastructure or anything physical because of tokenomics and the way that things work, that you have infinite possibilities, but only finite possibilities in real life, which is why I think the gamification way of how to start thinking through problems is not dependent on how work gets done. It will change how work gets done. And once the elder statesmen go, how'd you do that? And now that there's also, okay, do it again. Because they're probably thinking in a scarcity model, right? Which is, I need to make as much money as I can, right? And I can't lose money on this thing. It's my dad's company, blah, 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 and you're my worker. Don't fool around with that crap. Sometimes going a bit rogue is okay. And if it doesn't work out, well, then no one knows. But if it does, you can say, see. And that is that little bit of a spirit that I love to nurture out there. If it's a little bit of upsetting the apple cart, well, sometimes the apple cart needs to be upset. And there's this notion that, I'm starting out my career. Maybe I just got married. I'm saving up for a house. I'm doing all this stuff. I just need this check, man. I can't be bothered with this metaverse crap and AI and whatnot. And that will always be there because throughout history in our industry, actually, forget about the community, there's always been innovation. There's a better way of chopping at the stone. There's a better way of swinging the hammer. There's a better way of, instead of nailing something, you have nail guns now. I mean, innovation's always there.
Yep.
But we don't celebrate it. It just happens because, it's more efficient, more effective, and in certain cases more productive, and it helps me make money, makes for a better quality built environment. I'm done.
Yeah.
So sometimes you don't need to celebrate and go, man, you just don't get it. The metaverse is going to be it. And blah, blah. That's the wrong message to give to the elder statesman because now you scare the crap out of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So there's almost like this guerrilla warfare that needs to happen between the generations. I'm very fond of companies out there globally that take the elder statesmen that may have a curiosity, but they don't know what the hell to do. They're barely able to turn on their computer, right? And God forbid they get onto Zoom or even worse, Teams, right? So at the end of the day, they are the immigrants. But if you're a native, isn't it behooving on you to be hospitable to the people like that? So I like the firms that team up the younger generation with the older generation, because the older generation has instinct.
Yeah.
They understand how things get done. And they're not stupid. They understand that things do change. But are they looking at a ferocious change where they need to pivot really quick? Not really. In our industry, it takes a little longer.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Living in the South, I live in Tennessee right now. I moved from New York City down here. I learned this fine art of barbecue. Barbecue up north was hamburgers and hot dogs on the grill.
Yeah.
Down here, it's a religion. And they have one term that I really learned because I love to smoke ribs is low and slow. Mm-hmm. Right? And man, the flavor that comes out of that. So don't rush it.
Yeah.
Don't even call it the terms that you think.
Yeah.
But think like a gamer.
Yeah.
I'm learning so much from my son about NPCs and understanding that the game never ends. So much so that we're actually putting that into practice, that the gamification of our projects is that the project site never ends.
Yeah. Just
like Fortnite. Fortnite never ends. Your involvement is when you fly into Fortnite Island, right?
Yep.
And then your game either ends quickly or you can make it long. But the game is still there after you leave.
Yeah.
Same thing with the job site.
Yep.
So right now we're looking at avatars with motion capture as a way of augmenting my involvement physically on the site. Because when I leave at the end of the day and leave the job trailer, there's not like a certain project you may have a second shift come in, but for the most part it shuts down, you got some security, blah, 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 blah. But the work actually kind of stops. Then the next morning you come in, you do your reconciliations, workers' comp, certificate checks, so just all the stuff that you got to do when you manage a project. But what we're doing is that we're teaching my humanoid avatar to take on everything that I have. So motion capture, I use a GoPro camera, and it's like this headset, and it points back at me. And I read from a script, and the machine learns over time through repetition that when I, talk, my eyebrows go up, or I smile, I get dimples. When I'm sad, my eyes droop, and it captures all of that in real time. It then takes that onto a mesh that is my humanoid. And what we're doing now with machine learning is going through other scripts on what sort of decisions do I make based on these situations, right? So I'm actually having a conversation with myself. And the hope is that by this September, we're going to be rolling it out, that when I physically leave the job site, the digital equivalent of that, my digital twin, now lights up, and all of the avatars that have been in this learning type of thing, they now enter the job site. Doing reconciliation. Is my delivery tomorrow coming on time? All that stuff that we usually do first thing in the morning, it's taken care of when I'm not there.
Yeah.
So when I come back, you hit the ground running first thing, right?
Yep.
So that gamification is really, really cool. We're also experimenting with non-player characters, NPCs, where we're making them subject matter experts, where I have one being trained right now for healthcare facilities. It's learning everything about healthcare facilities, from pre-design, pre-construction, design, construction, facility management, operations, and simulations, right? Because I can sell that back to who? The equipment manufacturers of MRI machines, yada, 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 that want to be part of this metaverse, right? This virtual world. But what's really cool is with my NPC, I could rent it down from the cloud, and it's now my employee, either for the project or full-time.
Yep.
Now imagine if every building type had that, from libraries to schools to housing, multi-housing, supermarkets, whatever it is. You will have the expert, better than any human.
It's like
to be your assistant.
It's like in Ready Player One, right, where you you go to the archives and the butler guy's sitting there waiting for you.
Suddenly, I know how to do karate. Yeah. Exactly right. But so with Ready Player One, great book, okay movie. If we ever get to that point, we have failed as humans, because the dystopic way that Cleveland, I believe it was shown. Yeah. Right. If we ever get to that we have to escape into a VR world. Yeah, that's not horrible. Ideal. Yeah, right. And so I really do challenge the people in Hollywood. I have very good friends there all the time. They're like, Blade Runner. I'm like, who wants to live in Blade Runner? You want to live in Blade Runner? I want my kids to live in Blade Runner. Yeah. The hell? Yeah. That's lazy. Yeah. But also what's lazy is being so utopian that's perfect. Yeah. There's got to be something in between. And I think that's where AI is going to start to help us. Because the best use of AI right now is to manage AI. Mm-hmm. That's its best use case right now. So I skipped one thing about being in school. Remember I said I was doing IBM and all that? I actually quit school for about 3 years and then went back. And I quit because I got recruited into a band that was a Warner Brothers recording artist through Eek Records back in the 1980s. I'm a keyboard player. Oh, right? Nice. Yeah. There was one night we were the house band of the China Club in Manhattan. We were known as the American version of Squeeze back in the day. Like soul-oriented, very, very fun. We did really well. We were up for Best Band of the Year. We lost to They Might Be Giants. Best Male Vocalist, we lost to Billy Joel. And Best New Song of the Year, it was Taylor Dayne's song back in the day. I feel like the name was. But we were like right there. I almost feel like I was in that movie Almost Famous. Just right there, right? But the reason for the story is because back in the day, recording was very monotonous. You spent a lot of time in the studio because you could make a mistake or whatever, you got to redo it, blah, 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 blah. Well, I got involved with synthesizers and the electronic keyboards. And that changed a lot because I also had a Mac, the first original Mac, right? Mac Pro, I think it was called. 1 gig of RAM. Yeah. I thought it was like, 1 meg of RAM, sorry, right? So I had these tools that allowed me to create a lot of the replication so that I didn't have to have the keyboard for the synthesizer to actually work. I could program it in, and it sounded like I had an orchestra around me, and it was awesome, both live and, more importantly, in the recording studio. Yep. So I got invited into this group that was created out of Yamaha in Japan, and was called MIDI, or Musical Interface Digital Interface. And this allowed my keyboards to talk to a clicker. It allowed me to talk to a drum machine, to talk to lights, all this stuff so I could coordinate everything. And it was gold. Matthew, I was able to go in one take, boom, right? Saved lots of money, sounded great. We were kicking it. But here's the problem. There's this thing called a SMPTE code. And it's this thing that keeps time, right? It's a clicker. And that's what the drummer usually had in his ear so that it would keep time with my machines. And we sounded great. Total syncopation. Problem was, it was total syncopation. It sounded like, too perfect.
Yeah.
It was like robots playing. So we had to learn how to get around MIDI, which was to put mistakes in every so often. That A would have like that snare drum was just that millisecond off.
Yep.
Make it sound human. This is our challenge with reality capture, with motion capture, and with AI. How do we make it not perfect, yet maybe not as clumsy as being a human, but something in between so that it feels right?
Yeah.
Because the stuff that I'm seeing now, I can immediately see who used ChatGPT on that article.
Oh, yeah.
It just pops out.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So,
and that's, you got to focus on it as a tool, not the solution.
Thank you. Exactly. AI, digital twins, blockchain, all these things we use, they are tools. And I think that actually is the perfect answer to a question you asked about 20 minutes ago, which is, how do you stay in front of things? Well, have the curiosity to understand that they're just tools.
Yeah.
They may change a lot of things, but it's you that's changing it. So that when you are doing things and you feel like, oh my God, what am I doing in this, in this mechanical trade? What am I doing in this architectural firm? What am I doing here?
Yeah.
Just know that there's others out there. And I think through podcasts like this, through the events that you hold, especially this October coming up, with RCN, this is where you can come together and understand that you have a community.
Yeah. And
there are people thinking differently.
Yep.
And that is going to be the change, because otherwise we might as well just go back to chiseling out rock.
Yeah. Yeah. That is one of the things that excites me most about what we're doing with RCN is, over the years, though I'm still early, honestly, in my career, I've spent, 14 years now in laser scanning, LiDAR, learning how all the different devices work and applications across projects. And I didn't have a lot of people teaching me how to do it. A lot of it was self-taught. And then I find other people doing similar, and other people in BIM and other people in XR, but everybody's doing their own thing. They all have their own information. They all keep it to themselves. Nobody's really sharing these learnings. And the whole thought with RCN is, look, the power of building a community of those outside thinkers and of those innovators, and starting to really find a way to, it's part of why we're launching our committees that we're doing, is like, look, let's bring the leaders and the innovators and those outliers together to say, what are the problems right now? What are the solutions? What have we worked on? Let's work on a collective case study that we can all learn from. Because I feel like a lot of those people out there that are doing this have stayed silent, and they've stayed in a silo, and they've not shared their learnings. And I'm like, I see so many issues still, which is going to be one of my next questions to you also, is that there's a lack of, I think there's still a lack of professionals that are in these technologies to accomplish these visions right now of every city becoming a smart city and digital twins of every building. And every company is trying to hire people in these roles, and there's a lack of people, right? Schools are not pumping out people that are experts in digital twins and AI and laser scanners. And, so what are some of the shortcomings right now in order to accomplish some of this vision? And what are some thoughts around how we can get there?
Boy, I wish I had a clearer crystal ball, Matthew. But I want to say that, thank you for providing a voice for the people that need a voice. I really admire what you've accomplished so far, and I'm actually in more admiration of where I can see this going. This is a tour de force. Another Forrest Gump moment. I met up with a gentleman named David Hernandez, a dear friend, in the XR space. His Twitter handle back in the day was Metaverse1, before people even knew what the term was. Mm-hmm. Really out there. But he's not from our industry. He's more of a tech, right? And we were in San Francisco. I was there for some sort of conference. He met me for breakfast at a courtyard downtown. I'll never forget it. And we closed the breakfast. I mean, we talked like through the breakfast all the way until about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which, you know, most people say that they shut down bars. We shut down the breakfast bar.
Yeah.
So, and he introduced a concept to me that just captured my imagination. And he had to leave because he was preparing for a hackathon down in Silicon Valley. I went, what's that? So we started to talk, and he said, you know, the best thing that I can do is bring together my tech friends. He goes, but you have a collection of people that don't know the tech, but you can provide the targets for us to work on. So we knew some friends down at Facebook, and what we did was we put together, literally last minute, the hack room. So Mark Zuckerberg was very, very hospitable to our industry. He felt that this was something that he could do as an impact. So we had more Monster and Red Bull drinks than I care for, pizzas and all sorts of stuff on Facebook. And we got about 120 people show up on a Friday afternoon. And the terms were, you cannot mention your last name. You can't mention who you work for. Your first name, and if you have an idea or what sort of skills, what sort of stack can you work with. And form teams, self-teams, and it was called the lightning round. And I'll never forget it. It was so energetic. So when we created the AEC Hackathon, it was literally done for a curious reason, saying, you know, well, let's try this. If it works for tech, why can't it work for the built environment?
Yep.
We now have approximately 3,500 people worldwide. It is definitely, we just had one in Helsinki, I believe in Helsinki, and one in Germany this year already. We have another one coming up in Estonia. So it's taken on a global need.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I'd love to say to you, Matthew, is that, you know, the U.S. has its own issues, its own economy, largest economy in the world. You are in the right place at the right time, and thank the Lord that you're taking this on. But what I learned with the AEC Hackathon was that it was very U.S.-centric in the beginning for the first couple that we had. And then we started to go around to different cities, New York, Chicago, L.A., and we started to really mature this thing to a point going, this can be everything for everyone, because every hackathon's different, right? Because there's different technologies, different ways of doing things, and different people with different ideas, those rogue, well, wannabe rogue people that now have a platform to do something with. The hackathon is one type of way of performing that. I feel that RCN has that same type of spirit, of let's go out and break things. It's okay, right? Because you had to learn about, LiDAR and what a point cloud was and the use of drones. And now it's like instinctual, right? But it's still Buck Rogers to the majority of our industry, especially the small and medium enterprise guys, the sole practitioner guys, the plumbers in the Ford F-150s, we still have to reach out to them because they're the ones that are going to be showing the next generation how to do it. Yeah. Right. So we can't lose that. But at the same time, we have augmented tools now that, we're looking for a lot of people to come into our industry in the millions. Well, some of these technologies, especially with the things that can learn, they will at least be a caretaker, a safe harbor for a period of time until we get the next generation to come in. Yeah. Right. It's almost like the way that the monks back in the Dark Ages kept the spirit in the old abbeys by creating these beautiful manuscripts of knowledge so that when we woke back up, we at least had a baseline. We didn't have to start from scratch. That's the way that I feel that RCN is. You guys now are the gatekeepers, right, of generations of knowledge that you're capturing, right? And it's not just the physical built environment, because it's the story behind the bits and bytes, which is important, which is why, RCN is not just about how to, but it's sometimes why. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. That is the vision, is like, look, it's not about what I can create. It's not about what my team can create. It's about creating a community and platform to bring everybody else together to create, to share. And I also think I see a lot of other good organizations out there too that are focused on individual pieces of it. But even they are still a silo because they're just focused on one of the technologies. And it's part of why It seems complex, and I've had a lot of people tell me, you're really ambitious for trying to accomplish so many different things. But, our committees we have so many that because we feel like there needs to be a committee focused on LiDAR. We need a committee focused on digital twin. We need a committee focused on metaverse. We need committees of individuals and professionals that have that expertise to dive really deep to say, what are the platforms? What are the problems? What are the solutions? And then those committees need to cross-collaborate because we need to have a full understanding of how do we use all the technologies to get to that end vision, because it takes everybody. It takes all of them. There's no one person out there that can do the whole thing, right? So I appreciate that, and it's great having you involved as well. I'm sure there's more ways that we can pull you in and extract some more of your knowledge. When it still comes to some of the problems, I'd love to get actually very specific real quick. So in some of the projects and things you're looking at, building a smart city, and you've got the mix of technologies, the capture piece, the creating models, the linking data, the sensors, everything that goes into that. Where are some of the, off the top of your head, bottlenecks right now? Is it being able to efficiently capture all the buildings? Is it creating digital models? Is it linking of data? Where are some of those immediate pain points you can think of that might also answer the question of, if there's people entering the workforce and can't choose where to fit, where are some of those needs that we would say, hey, this is where we're going. This is some of the shortcomings. If you start learning these technologies, that's going to be a big need for this vision.
Excellent question. Before that, there were technologies out in the field. There were processes with different types of physical tools, right? And understanding how to put a building together, you don't get that fresh out of school. You learn through experience over time. And when I was a super out in the field, actually senior project manager, mega projects had been happening in the Bronx, places where it's very difficult to do work. Mm-hmm. It was about the people that I had to learn the most. It wasn't about that new, shotcrete thing, or it wasn't that nail gun thing, or it wasn't that, we prefabbed some of the things out on site that had to be brought in. All that stuff is cool, but it's the cross-functional pieces that were always the bottleneck. The handoffs, understanding that the pile drivers going in needed to work with the structural steel folks so that the long lead items need to be totally coordinated. The coordination of everything that you just said is the biggest bottleneck, because there's a lot of good construction managers. There's not a lot of good digital construction managers.
Yep.
And that's going to be the biggest growth growing out of virtual design and construction professionals.
Yeah.
Once they understand that it's not about BIM, it's about BIM being a hub to many other things that happen in there. And if you're the coordinator and understand that these pieces of data become very important over here downstream, and you're the caretaker of that, you're valuable.
Yeah.
Because now it's not starting it again. I can't tell you how many projects, especially in the Middle East, because people are making a lot of money off the inefficiencies, where they do a capture out in the field of field. This is what we got. Then, the way that I work is that I periodically then recapture things. But I see people doing things because, let's take NEOM. There's 6 major projects, but the only project that actually has a deadline is Trojena. That's because they're going to be hosting the Asian Winter Games in 2029. The Winter Games in the middle of the desert. Just saying.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There's 6 clusters of projects that make up Trojena, and we've yet to break ground, and it's the size of the country of Belgium. Right? The coordination that I'm looking at right now is that we're simulating ahead of time everything that happens in the field from a construction management aspect, from where's the long lead items, are they on the site at that particular time, so that this trade then can come in and know what they're doing. So it's about getting back to basics, that the technologies that when you start to take data from one phase into another, and then start to cross-reference and have that way of creating a process map that you can then show people to say, this is why we're doing this. This is why we have this expense. This is why we're spending the money, because this is the payoff over here. You've now proven value, right? So there's got to be a lot of education in that. The digital construction manager is the next big growth field that is, we need it now.
Today. Yesterday.
Right? Because there's a lot of money being spent. And sometimes people go, why do we spend that money? Next project, budget line item. We don't need that reality capture. Cut.
Yeah.
When that's the building blocks of everything that you're doing. It's a house of cards if you don't do it like that.
Yep.
So I think there's an education, there's a training need that, you just because you're good at Revit doesn't mean that you're good at pulling in a point cloud.
Yeah.
Or you think that making the metaverse is by sticking your Revit model onto an Unreal Engine or Unity and you think you're done? Good luck.
Yep.
We're moving from a world of level of detail into a new medium that avatars are the new mouse. That's how you interact with this medium, which means that that medium may not be a good experience. Just doing save as of the built environment, you think you're doing it and you think, oh, well, that's the metaverse. That's my digital asset. No, it's not. Look at Ready Player One. Ready Player One, when the two heroes go into the nightclub, they actually have gravity. Wow, it's just like in real life. And they enter the bar area. But when they want to dance, the dance floor loses physics.
Yeah.
And suddenly they're doing crazy dancing and all this other stuff. And then they come back down, right? So why can't we learn from that in real life?
Yeah.
Why? Because just because your building may have a level of experience that may be good in real life, it may suck in the digital world.
Yep.
Which means there needs to be modifications. There needs to be different ways of looking at things, which means there's a life cycle now to everything that's captured. You're giving life. You are literally, having the lightning bolt hit Frankenstein when you're reality capturing.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's alive.
Yep.
What you do with it is the value. And just because you've captured it, that's the first step in a long process.
And that's where a lot of it pauses right now, is the growth of capture has been exploding over the last several years. Lots of companies are starting to capture. There's still definitely training and growth and all of that needs to happen there. Which device, accuracies, control. There's a lot of problems even with capture today, which is one thing we're focused on. But the next piece is now we're creating so much data that the companies don't know what to do with. And that's where it then again, like you've hit on it. We need training. We need we need planning. People need to know how to use that data. Because that is where the value is. And looking ahead, it is that whole mix of capturing data, using digital models, then integrating AI, then integrating sensors to get to that future vision of a digital twin of a building, but then that grows to become the digital twins of a city, which is, to me, that's where I see Metaverse is like, it is that future of fully connected digital, the mix of, look, I want to walk out in the city with my XR glasses on and be able to see data. And we can't get there unless this whole ecosystem can work together and we can grow our community of people that can perform this work, because it's I think we have a long ways to go. And that's a thing I constantly think about, is like, how can we use things like the podcast and media and social to inspire next generations to get into these technologies in a way that it impacts this real world, right? This isn't just gaming. I love games. I'm a gamer. Those are fun, but they don't fix problems at an airport or expansion of an overpopulated city. This is, I said it at our first conference, I was like, we are in the most important industry in the world. We literally build the world. The world cannot operate without the built environment industries. So it's critical.
Matthew, you've just hit right on the head, and that is the crux of everything, why I get up in the morning. And hope that everyone that listens to this podcast just hears this little bit. The human race only needs 3 things to survive on this planet. And that is fresh water, safe food, and shelter. Everyone that's listening to this broadcast right now, you have a very noble cause. I don't care if you are that sole practitioner plumber going out just doing your job every day, or you're part of a large architectural firm, and you wear your nice suits and you do your designs. No matter who you are in that ecosystem, you should hold your head high every day, because you're saving this species on this planet. The planet's going to be here. no matter what, climate change, all this stuff, save the earth. No, save the humans. This is a human-centric world. The earth is going to be fine. Billions of years from now, it'll be in some state, but it's fine. It only knows what it knows. So when we have to work every day, if you feel down because, your boss is saying, we're not doing reality capture on this job, you're like, face palm, like, really? Really? You're cutting costs there? There's this notion sometimes that we have a mental health issue in our industry, not just community, but the industry. And it's serious. When you see the statistics of what that means and certain tragic results of that, hold your head high and look back, because we need you. We need everyone, no matter what you're going through. But know that you have a noble cause, that you are saving the human race every day just by doing your job.
Yep, absolutely. I love that share. I love that point. And even like I almost said it earlier when we were talking about, how we inspire people to step outside the box. And there is that point. Like, we need everybody, right? The puzzle isn't complete if we only have innovators and outside thinkers. We need every single role. We can't all be entrepreneurs. We can't all go start businesses. We all need, and so though that's like a path that some of us take and we're excited about it, we're passionate about it, I also am like, look, there's nothing wrong with saying stay in a company. Like, just because I stepped out and started a company, I don't think everybody should do that. Sometimes, people that do that even have regrets, right? Of like, man, you're taking on way more work. If you don't have a reason you're doing it, your why isn't big enough, you're not passionate about it. That's why most small businesses fail. They quit, they give up. They're like, okay, this isn't why I got into this. So there is nothing wrong with whatever your role is. Do it well. Like you talked about, be the best janitor, be the best plumber. I like to just, in that inspiration piece of, hey, if you are the one that wants to be the innovator, it's more just inspiring you to have that courage, like you talked about, of take the step. Not convince everybody to become that person, but if it is you, don't let the fear and the other things be what holds you back. But I really appreciate your shares today, your stories, talk about the tech and some of the future vision. As we start to wind down, as respect to your time, I'd love to let you just have a few minutes of really sharing a little bit of your last thoughts, your end thoughts on the direction we're going, inspiration to some of those listeners of what's ahead, some of your future thoughts, since you obviously are very future focused.
Yeah, but there's also reality also. Right?
There is. Yeah.
So there's in real life, which is, okay, how do you provide value that way? Just a couple of things. So, I like the organization that pulls together a recognized digital construction manager role, almost like a certificate. That will be that next big great step. No pressure. Just saying that, that because those things are going to be very valuable once people see it in action, because it's very easy to show. This equals this equals this, which, this is why, these types of medium, be it podcasts, be it in live events, become very important, because I may have an idea, you may have an idea, but when we put the two ideas together, a third better idea comes out.
Yep.
Right. So with that in mind, the sharing and the trust that's built up over time, you don't give trust, you earn trust.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I'm seeing with your community, is that people are starting to trust,
Yep.
and thank you for leading that. The thing that I'd like to see more, though, just getting into what that should be for the future, comes down to a word that a lot of people, especially our industry, feel very awkward about. And that's the word love. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about romantic love. This isn't about a Me Too movement.
Yep.
But it's about love of thyself, love between people, love of your team, love of your company, love of your craft, love of the industry, and just love of humanity, right? We shy away from that word. You put hashtag love and suddenly like you're a pedophile or something. It's like, what? The bonds that you have, especially when you're doing something noble, creates sisterhood and brotherhood. And that means that you can be an entrepreneur and be on the outlier side of things. But that means you should have the same respect for you as the person that's leading a large engineering firm or a large construction firm, or is part of an association of mechanical folks, or whatever it is, right? We should immediately recognize that that other person is in our tribe.
Yep.
Right? That is the future, because then we can trust ourselves, which means as these tools start to mature, we also trust what they represent. Oh, you have this reality capture model. I know you. I trust you. You're good. I don't need to be going back in and doing, the idea that the as-built drawing, what a joke we call it as-builts.
Oh, yeah.
They're kind of built,
Yeah.
It's kind of built that way. But what happens when we start to trust that better, and we start to see things like smart contracts come into play more and more and more, excuse me, where the actual data is not a field that you plug into a PDF, because who trusts that? But I will trust that you're Matthew, I'm Paul. We both recognize that. We put it into the actual code itself.
Yeah.
And that becomes the smart contract. It's now immutable.
Yep.
We are now starting to build the golden thread that we've always wanted to achieve, which is, I trust this data, I trust this transaction, move on. Again, the mundane. Let AI take care of that, the mundane, so that we can have higher levels of discussion to come up with real solutions out there. So, that's the hope. I do think and believe that, when I see friends like my fellow architect friend, Kimono Onuma out of California, he has been a pioneer forever. I love him as a professional because he pushes boundaries. One of his big customers is the GSA, General Service Administration, federal government, right? He's the guy that introduced everything from CAD to BIM to whatever to the federal freaking government.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So he gets contracts like with the VA hospitals and whatnot. But his coolest client is the state of California's community college system. So he has hundreds of campuses, right?
Yep.
And he uses it as a sandbox. What he showed at the National Institute of Building Sciences 10 days ago in Washington during the Building Innovation Conference, he has this thing called BIM Storm that usually it's like at the end of the conference and does, almost like a speed dating type of thing of understanding. People stand up and say, yeah, I'm doing this and blah, 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 right? He showcased something that just blew my mind, which comes full circle to the beginning of this conversation, which is, I want to live to see that buildings are computers, but I didn't expect that the buildings actually have personalities. And what he's done is that he's taken IoT that was open, so the Internet of Things. It can be everything from CCTV cameras to Nest types of devices for temperature control to Ring, for entering buildings and that type of thing. And he uses those as nodes. He does not consider CCTV anything other than a sensor, right? So all the data points, it could be seen as image, but he looks at it as a data. So what he's done is that he's now been able to train his buildings to talk with him and have it literally tell him what's going on. So on one end of the spectrum are not high volume with human type of elements like storage warehouses, let's say, right? Very, very simple type of building type, as opposed to a laboratory for oncology hospital, right? Very, very high end, lots of data. So what he's done is that he's on a campus in California, he's been able to say, okay, the gymnasium has one type of data points that I want to see. The storage warehouses are another. The classrooms are another. The cafeteria is another. And what he's doing, over time, it's learning itself on how it performs. It now also starts to ping him to say, in about 2 months, I'm not feeling too well. You need to change this filter.
Yeah.
It's talking to him.
Yeah.
And then he responds, and he's actually put natural language into it, where he has some buildings that are funny. He has other buildings that are just very stoic, right? Not a lot of data. And there's others that are just delightful, to work with. And he goes, what I've discovered is buildings have feelings and buildings have personalities. I'm like, oh my God.
That's pretty crazy.
The personification of the built environment.
Yeah.
Right? So this is where, it sounds crazy, but people are doing it on real projects.
Yeah.
They are outliers. I don't expect, cities tomorrow to actually all have conversations, because it's enough having people have conversations. Imagine having an anxiety-filled, building going, I'm not feeling good. I don't know.
Yep.
So that's kind of where the future's going. But it really comes back to community,
Yep.
trusting each other, and love.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that share. I love that share. I think that's so true. There's parts over the last several years that, I get a lot of questions about why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? I started as a services company doing laser scanning. And then through all the problems I see, I start teaching other people laser scanning. And people are like, why are you giving away your secrets? Why are you could just be building this yourself. I'm a scanning company. I don't even want to come to your conference because you do scanning. I'm like, everybody's thinking too narrow and too small and too me, right? To me, I really early on started seeing the value of if we just break down some walls and we want to help each other, and it goes back to that cliche saying of the rising tide lifts all boats, right?
Yep.
But it's so true that when you are an individual or a company that focuses so much just on you and you have that competitive mindset and you're focused on the money and that is such a path to failure. That this idea, your ending points of like, we need to like break that down and love each other. It is so true. The more you care about your team, your environment, your coworkers, your employees, the more that you love people, and same back to the client, right? Like our mission shouldn't be, how can I get the most money out of the client? It should be,
right.
I want you to be successful. I want to implement these in a way that it benefits you. Like if we put that mindset into the work we do, it literally changes everything. So I love that is your ending point. I totally agree with you. And it's why I love building community and bringing like-minded people together is like, let's figure out how to make the community win, not just one person.
That's right.
The mission has to be that it is a win-win for everybody involved, not a selfish pursuit. And I think that is the path to making all of these things we've talked about actually achievable.
Well said. Well said, Matthew.
Well, thank you very much for coming on today. Again, I'm sure it won't be the last time we have you involved in the community. Look forward to sharing this out and appreciate your time today.
Courage.
All right. We'll see you guys again soon. Thank you.